This is Nationalist Review.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, my recording's. Let me make sure it's actually picking up my voice real quick. Yeah, it's going. Your voice cracks, but the 18-year-old is doing fine. Got it.
Welcome back to Nationalist Review. Back in the studio for a regular program for the first time in about a month, I think. I've been doing shows from the road. Did the show from TR-WrestleMania. Did the show from Identity Europa Conference, and then from Northwest Forum last week. But back for a real studio show, and joined by a first-time co-host riding shotgun on the Nationalist Review, Spaceship to Mars, I don't know, going to the interplanetary European Imperium. Joseph Rowan, a good friend and member of the America First Discord, a frequent guest on the streams we do on my personal channel. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm Joseph Rowan. I'm a Texan-based nationalist, and I have to moderate the mess of a Discord server James has.
Yeah, you're responsible for cleaning up trap posts, furry posts, and fed posts.
Yeah, no, I'm behind the rule of no furries, personally.
See, that's not a rule that I object to. That's what I'm okay with. You're also behind the pro tummy rules on the Discord, as I understand.
That is true. I am indeed behind the pro tummy activism, which I take part in.
Excellent. Well, this should be a good show. You also are a guest or host. I should probably know this, considering all of the panel is from my Discord as well. But Rising Right, tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, the Rising Right. I show up on that podcast. I'm a guest. I'm not actually in like the main. I don't know what you would call it, Imperial Council of the Rising Right. I show up. Usually they tell me, "Hey, you want to be on?" And I forget to do any prep, and nice. I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's always good.
Well, that's a really good way to do shows. The question is, though, when you are a guest, do you contribute more than, I think it's Thanos, who just like laughs every 30 seconds?
yeah, Thanos, who does not speak and only contributes with his laugh, but he has a pretty good laugh, so I'm okay.
Yeah, he's got a nice giggle. Well, something that I'm not laughing about was the story that I found out last night about the horde, the unwashed mass of La Criatura, the what is it, the Ogros Los Americanos?
La Atrocidad.
La Atrocidad, indeed. Coming up from Honduras, from Central America, this amalgam of, as Emma Lazarus would put it, very bigoted woman, Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem, the wretched refuse of Honduras.
Wretched refuse, indeed.
I can't believe she's so anti-immigrant. I thought we're supposed to love and cherish our immigrants, Emma, Jews are the real anti-immigrants now, right?
That's true.
But anyways, she would write, they're coming up from Honduras and these other Central American countries up through Mexico, and they're going to be descending upon, it looks like your state down there in Texas.
Texas, my Texas. Oh, boy.
Aren't you ready to be culturally enriched? Apparently, there's 1,500 to 5,000. The estimates vary. They're being hoarded by a multinational, international non-government organization up through, and I'm missing the name of the group right now. Oh, it's Migrants en la Lucha, Migrantes en la Lucha, which means migrants in the fight. Fight against who?
The fight against who? Who could they possibly be talking about?
Yeah, the fight against evil America that wants to keep out all of these doctors and lawyers and physicians and brain surgeons.
Neurosurgeons, right? Every one of them. We
could be losing the next Elon Musk, the next Nikola Tesla, the next Steve Jobs if we don't let these hordes in. But no, this is exactly how they do it in Europe, right? Where the NGOs and non-government organizations go out and hoard up a bunch of third worlders and then bring them in vast numbers to the borders of the European states, to Germany or France or Italy or wherever else, or Hungary or wherever else they're going to land, And there's just so many of them that the government can't fight back. And it looks like that is exactly what they're trying to do here. They have anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000 of them, and they are apparently going to descend upon Brownsville, Texas, sometime in the next week. And
very ironic name there, Brownsville. It's
it will
not to
truly
be
live up to its
Brownsville.
name. Yes, it will truly live up to its name after this week. And imagine my shock when the conservative media is not actually reporting this. I was trying to find headlines about this on Breitbart. I was on the headline of Breitbart. They were doing a very good job of covering anti-Semitism. Right? They're doing a very good job of covering that in Israel, but no stories on the Breitbart front page.
That's what really
about
matters. 2% of the population. That is what matters. The 65% of the population, not at all. Us Texans don't matter. No, we gotta cater to the anti-Semitism.
Well, I wonder if even on Breitbart, Texas. Okay, so it is the headline on Breitbart, Texas. To be fair,
goodness.
It is the headline on Breitbart, Texas, where they say a caravan of more than 1,500 families, including men, women, and children, are making their way from Central America through Mexico and are expected to arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border in the coming days to request refugee status. Now, they don't really frame this well, right? Because these people are not men, women, and children. They're invaders. This is an invading army. And to humanize them and to try to cast them in a sympathetic light, they run the picture out here of the guy walking with his kid. These are not families that we need to be concerned about. Okay, if these people really cared about their families, they would not have embarked on this 1,500-mile march from Central America to Mexico to the U.S. to hopefully claim refugee status. They would stay in their home country and improve conditions there.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: if these people are all neurosurgeons and they're all going to really help out, they're leaving their absolute garbage countries. They could just stay there and make their own countries better if they're this great.
Right, and that's sort of an alt-light type of angle to take on this, right? Is that we are engaging in the phrase I've used is what is it? Intellectual colonialism, right? We're intellectual colonialists for taking all of their smart people, but really, what we should be answering and what we should be thinking about is what will this do to America? What will this do to our country? And 1,500 or 5,000 or however many it is, more people in the U.S., this is going to be a massive strain on the resources of the state of Texas, a big strain on the resources of the federal government to provide housing and clothes and food and resources and schools and doctors for all of these people who are coming in who have no right to be here. Right? They have not contributed to America. They've not contributed to building America into what it is. They're coming from a garbage dump of a country, and that's the country they have built. Okay? We've built a pretty nice country in America, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. And it is this fantasy that many conservatives have too, that we're going to somehow make our country better by bringing in people from countries that are markedly worse.
Well, yeah, they can't make the connection between the people and the people there have made the conditions they live in. They're not just magically. The country is not magically bad. People have to make it bad.
Yeah, and when they say, "Oh, we're fleeing gang violence," or we're fleeing drug trafficking, we're fleeing warfare. Do people not think they're going to bring those things with them? Are we really supposed to believe there are no gang members immersed in this 1,500 or 5,000 people?
Well, there are.
Are we really
even
supposed
more.
to believe that they're not bringing that with them?
Yeah, there's even more they'll bring with them because some have used disease as an excuse for why they're leaving. Large disease outbreaks. Now, they're going to bring those diseases here, and those diseases we've probably never seen before. God knows what develops in those favelas where lots of people don't have plumbing.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean that's the sort of conditions you get when you start bringing in the third world. There's a common mantra that is import the third world, become the third world, and that is something that I think we and now we're learning why you don't do the show on Discord because we're getting people dropping into our feed here. We just had Johnny Chimpo make an appearance. Yeah, no. Anyways, this is the reason why you don't bring in people from the third world is because they're going to bring their problems with them. Now, this is part of the report from the Center for Immigration Studies. 5 days ago, the caravan set out from Tapachula and began its trek northward. The group chanted, "We are migrants. We are not criminals. We are workers." Approximately 80% of the group members are Hondurans. As they've continued to make their way to the U.S., Mexican immigration authorities have allowed the migrants to move with relative ease. On Monday, Pueblo Sin Fronteras posted a video with the caption, quote, the refugee caravan knocking down borders yesterday in Hutan. Immigration agents abandoned the post when they saw us coming. The people celebrate this first small victory. And there are other reports from a journalist who is immersed in the crowd with BuzzFeed, a BuzzFeed journalist, who is saying that actually these municipalities in Mexico are paying for bus rides for these groups of migrants to get them further north.
So they're entirely complicit in this.
No, the Mexican government is absolutely complicit. And they are, in a legal sense, if we were to think of this in terms of crime, they would be accessories to this crime. They would be accessories to the crime of bringing these thousands of migrants up to the border and making them our problem. And yet, people say we need to be on good terms with Mexico for trade relations. We need to be on good terms with Mexico for this or that. And yet we see what they do to us in immigration. We see them try to push the problems of the third world upon us, and we're not supposed to react with any sort of retribution.
Well,
right. The smart thing to do here would be to tell Mexico, hey, if you keep moving these people northward, sanctions are going to happen, bud. We're going to we're not going to stand up and we're not going to sit down and take this. But even President Trump appears to be at this point either turning a blind eye or unwilling to fight back on this.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear how complicit Mexico is, it really makes you think, why would Mexico want people with dual loyalties in the United States? I mean, these people, when they come here, they like a lot of these alt-right types and things like to pretend that a lot of these people will integrate just fine. But I mean, the reality is I see a lot of these people. I'm Texan, and they still fly their Mexican flags. They're still loyal to Mexico, and a lot of them put Mexico first. So it makes perfect sense why the Mexican government would support these people and allow them transit to the southern border of the United States, because they want a populace that can push Mexican interests in the United States.
Absolutely. And the U.S. has done things like this in the past as acts of subterfuge and acts of destabilization in other countries, right? This is a classic way that you destabilize a country. I mean, you think about it. Is it better to fight against a nation that is homogenous and united, or to fight against a nation, not even fight against, to try to exert leverage over a nation that is homogenous and united, or a nation that is fractured and broken and has split allegiances? Of course, if you're fighting an enemy or you're working against an enemy, you would like them to be fighting each other and preoccupied with internal conflicts instead of unified and having solidarity. So it makes perfect sense why Mexico and Honduras and other nations across the world, some more than others, would push these types of policies on the U.S. and why they would try to get the U.S. to go along with this. But the question is now, at this point, what's going to happen when these people get to the border? Because let's split the difference and say there's 3,000 of them. I think is a good estimate, because they are picking up members as they go, right?
Yeah.
People are saying, oh, they're refugees fleeing conditions in Honduras, but every reporter on the ground is saying, oh yeah, like other Mexicans are just like dropping what they're doing, throwing on their poncho and joining in and coming to the U.S. So this is clearly not like actually refugee seeking,
No, not at all.
refuge seeking. Right. The question is, what's going to happen? Okay, 3,000 people show up on the border with Brownsville, Texas. What's going to happen? I mean, I kind of have my idea what's going to happen, and I hope I'm wrong. But Joseph, what do you think? What's your prediction?
Honestly, look, either Trump turns these people away and saves its voter base, or he, concedes to the media. I mean, lately he's been on a big trend of trying to look good. He's really trying to appease the media, and honestly, I think these people might just be let in.
See, that's my fear, because if that happens, he is a one-term, if that, president. Right?
Definitely.
Enforcing the border against like massive migrant invasions is something you would expect. You would expect George Bush even to do that, right? You would expect George Bush to even put up some kind of fight. But Trump, who literally ran on a platform of deporting every single illegal alien, building a wall, and banning Muslims from the United States, if that guy can't stand up and enforce our border laws and defend our border, then who will? And frankly, at that point, if he's not going to stand up against that, then what is even the point of him being in office, dude? Like
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Texas, and that's why a lot of people voted for him down here. That was a main central issue was immigration. A lot of people are not comfortable with their neighbors speaking Spanish, with them not even practicing the same culture, acting differently. It's uncomfortable and it's alienating in your own nation. And a lot of people have experienced crimes by these immigrants, etc.
mhm.
So down here, if he lets these, say, 3,000 in, then he's going to lose his Texas voter base real quick, and I would say extended his southern voter base.
Yeah, and it's even beyond that. It's national at that point. Like the base is so demoralized right now with this omnibus thing, with the failure to get anything done with DACA, and with Trump sort of playing a game with his own voter base. And this is, and I know that on this podcast, several episodes of this show have been dedicated to debating DACA and the effectiveness of Trump's negotiating tactic. But it looks like a certain co-host on this program was actually accurate in what they predicted several episodes ago when they said that Trump's DACA negotiation tactic was not going to be good for him and his voter base. Yes, no deal would happen, sure. But the base is just so demoralized right now. There's not been a legislative win. Trump has not gotten a win since tax reform, which was, going on several months ago now. And on immigration, it's loss after loss. I mean, these circuit courts that he is for some reason still obeying, staying DACA, making DACA stay in place, prohibiting Trump from enforcing deportation against these DACA recipients. Trump consistently out there signaling that we need to take care of and help these DACA recipients. On immigration, the Trump presidency has been largely a disaster, and even the supposed decrease in border crossings that was being talked about very heavily. It used to be talked about very heavily on this program, but even that now we're seeing is rebounding. Trump's softness on immigration is coming back to bite him. This is from the New York Times. Migrant shelters along the southern border are filling up again. Immigration lawyers in this region say their caseloads are spiking. Across the Southwest, border officers are stopping more than 1,000 people a day. Just months after border apprehensions hit a 17-year low, which administration officials proudly celebrated as a Trump effect, the number of migrants trying to enter the United States has been surging, surpassing 40,000 along the southern border last month. More than double the springtime numbers, according to new data from the Homeland Security Department. So, look, if Trump wants to be a president weak on immigration, he's going to alienate so many working class white voters that voted for him specifically for that reason.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing with these the Mexicans now crossing again is that a lot of them did stop crossing because they thought it was going to be harder now. But by postponing and not acting on immigration for so long, then they're just going back to what they were doing before. They're not threatened anymore.
Yeah, and the thing about deportations too, and we'll touch on this here in this next story, is these people, nobody wants them here, right? Nobody wants these illegals here. Okay, and so there's a massive disconnect between what the system will allow and what the people want. And I firmly believe that if Trump were to start directing ICE and DHS to enforce the laws on the books, you would see the people rally behind the president. People would be very supportive of these deportations. And I guess we can kind of get insulated in sort of a bubble because immigration is our number one issue for obvious, permanent demographic reasons. But people even outside of this bubble, when you talk to them about immigration, they agree, right? They don't want illegals here any more than we do. They don't want their kids growing up as the only non-Spanish speaker in the classroom any more than we do. This is an issue that regular, normal, decent, working-class Americans across the country can resonate with. And Trump would only increase his popularity were he to live up to his promises on this. I really don't see the reason for continuing to be held in this sort of paralytic death spiral by these Ninth Circuit courts.
Yeah, well, see, we live in a clown world where enforcing the law is racist. And, we can't be doing that. We got to get that demographic transition going. So you have, of course, these courts, and the swamp is so dug in. Honestly, I don't think Trump he campaigned on his whole drain the swamp thing, but I really don't think he expected how dug in the swamp would be. And I think it's really taken a toll on him.
Yeah, I see that. At the same time, I mean, there are opportunities where he could, in my opinion, be doing better. Look, the thing about the DACA signaling and saying, "Look, we're going to take care of him. We're going to get a great deal for the Dreamers."
Oh,
Like,
that upsetted me.
yeah, I get the strategy, right? Like, I understand the strategy, and you don't have to use the big brain or the high IQ to explain to me what's going on there, because I get it, but that doesn't make me like it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody likes that. Right, because the left sees it as disingenuous. And look, I get it. MAGA-Peds like, oh, he's trolling the media. Look, yeah, we understand. But at the same time, you're gaslighting your base into believing that's actually an okay thing to believe. You're gaslighting your base into believing that, oh, yeah, maybe we should support amnesty because these people are hard workers or great people or whatever. Like, no.
Yeah.
Trump won promising to deport every single one of these people. There's no reason to go back on that now.
Yeah, I don't think he really realizes that he does have a lot of followers, largely boomers, who will just take whatever he says and take it as the word of God. I mean, and so him doing that, yeah, he's trolling the libtards, but what it comes down to is he's going to make a lot of his followers actually start thinking, oh, well, I guess if Trump says it's okay, I guess it can't be that bad.
Enforcing white genocide to own the libs. Replacing your people to own the libs. Yeah, it's, it is irritating. And there's always the, deplorable Karen type or whatever on Facebook and Twitter who, as soon as Trump says we need DACA, will come out and be like, DACA is a Republican issue and it's going to help all these based blacks, and all this just the fucking amalgam of boomer talking points.
You're not taking into account the based creaturas we can help out.
The based goblinos.
All the based goblinos in their Trump hats will be parading in the streets.
El Goblino in a MAGA hat. Yeah, no, it's not happening. Some good news that is also combined with bad news that I saw being shared around. I think Jazzhands tweeted this out this week. Was pregnant women respected by the Trump administration. The Trump administration said Thursday that it ended special considerations to generally release pregnant women charged with being in the U.S. illegally while their cases wind through immigration court. Now, this should just illustrate to you how backwards the system is. Because in August 2016, Barack Obama instituted a policy where pregnant women who are subject to deportation would be arrested, held by ICE or DHS or whoever, and then released until unless they had a serious criminal history or there were, quote, extraordinary circumstances.
Can you imagine if we applied this to other crimes? Like if you're a pregnant woman and you steal a granola bar from the convenience store, you just get off because you're pregnant?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably an attorney out there that could argue that was okay because hormone imbalances or whatever. But speaking from a demographic perspective, this is suicidal to arrest pregnant women who are in your country illegally and then release them back into your country where you're not going to get these people back, right? They say, yeah. Come back in 2 weeks to get deported, and then he's like, oh, si, senor, and never comes back. Dude, they're never coming back. Okay, this is not advisable. But this is what we were doing. We were arresting them and then letting them go. So in fact, this would incentivize women who think they're going to be deported to get pregnant, so they would get released.
Yep.
And that was the policy on the books. Now, of course, with Trump changing that policy, it gives no blanket special consideration to pregnancy, though the agency says each case will be reviewed individually, and women in their third trimester will generally be released. So. Good job, I guess, Trump, because you're letting second trimester women go. But if any illegal alien is here and in their third trimester of pregnancy, that kid's going to be an anchor baby, and that woman is staying here. She's not getting.
Oh boy, I mean that's kind of a pattern with Trump, though. You go, well, I mean that's kind of good, but it's also really bad.
Yeah. If you just read the headline, it's like, wow, this is awesome. Of course, the more awesome situation and the ideal policy in this case would be immediate deportation, expedited deportation for pregnant women. It's a ticking time bomb. And if the child happens to be born in the U.S., we should not have birthright citizenship anyways, so the kid wouldn't even be a citizen, dude.
Yep. I mean, instant deportation. I mean, there's many methods you could go about. Paradropping, perhaps. Uh, I mean, pregnant women are quite round. The catapulting.
Well, the interesting thing is I see, like, I was on Craigslist a while ago looking for a new car, and I ended up buying, I bought a beater. And if anybody follows me on Instagram, they have been following the saga of this hot hatch that I bought from a gentleman who may have misled me about the status of some of the repairs on this vehicle, and I'm now looking at replacing my head gasket. It's a whole saga. Follow me on Instagram; you'll see the whole thing going on. Anyways, but I was on Craigslist looking for cars, and I found a lot of school buses. There's a lot of school buses for sale for like $4,000, and I think an entrepreneurial individual could get some shekels together and start a privatized deportation company. With $20,000 or so, buy a couple buses, paint them black, make them look real scary, install some handcuffs built into the seats, and start hauling people back. Get a contract with DHS, it'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, making the U.S. more ANCAP. That's a very interesting take.
See, in ANCAP paradise, I would not be doing these podcasts. I would be doing privatized deportation. I'd be a privatized deportation bus driver.
Privatized deportation bus driver. That would be quite the job. Quite the job. Very smelly job.
Yeah, you'd want the interior to be hosed down. You would not want a lot of porous surfaces in there.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I mean it's just incredible how many rights you have in this country as an illegal alien. And this is something people have talked about before. But if you are in an Asian country, right? I talked about this on a couple shows now. But when I was in Japan, right, I was very concerned with following every local law and custom and being, respectful on the subway and all these things that just make you, part of their society. That don't make you part of their society, but keep you from standing out, right? Keep you from being obnoxious. You don't want to be that obnoxious foreigner. But it seems like people in our country don't have the same consideration. They don't have the same, and I just saw the picture you sent me on Discord. That's fantastic. They don't have the same consideration for our customs, for our practices, for the way we do things here. They don't have that same concern. And so they feel like they have a license to act however they want, to act with whatever customs they bring over from their home countries, and that we are obliged to kowtow to them and their the way they do things.
Look, just head on over to Mongolia and go cross the Chinese border, and then when they arrest you, just explain that they're violating your human rights.
Yeah, no, that was the other part of the first story that I really loved was the mission statement from Migrantes en la Lucha, where they said that our mission, here's the thing, our mission is to provide shelter and safety to migrants and refugees in transit, accompany them in their journey, and together demand respect for our human rights.
Entry to the United States apparently is a human right.
Access, well, here's the thing, access to Western countries is a human right. Joseph, don't you know? Everyone in the world has access to our societies, things our countries have built, our nations have built. That's a human right. And if we keep them out, we're violating their human rights.
Yeah, of course. Who decides human rights?
Yeah, who indeed? Whomst indeed is the arbiter of what these human rights are? That's a very important question, one that definitely needs answering. Well, who does do a good job defending their border? And in this omnibus bill, we actually paid for their border wall. Can you take a guess? It's not Texas.
Believe it's some country in the Middle East. They're quite small. They have an interesting star on their flag as well.
Yeah, well, it's not Syria. It's not.
No.
It's not Qatar. It's not Qatar. The country that we paid for the border wall and that we are actually defending and is doing a good job defending their border, it is, of course, Israel. Israel, a few days ago, you may have heard, had a similar situation to what we have now. They didn't have El Goblinos coming to their border. They had Palestinians protesting, and it's unclear whether the protesters were even trying to gain entry to Israel. I don't know. I haven't read that part of the story. I don't know exactly what the Palestinians were doing.
Honestly, it seems like a really chaotic situation. Like not many good takes from the media because it was just a total mess.
It seems sort of unclear. And this article doesn't really clarify either. But from Wall Street Journal, they say Israel's military on Saturday defended soldiers who fired on Gazan protesters and said it was ready to ready to respond with force again as demonstrations continued, raising prospects of a fresh conflict with Islamist movement Hamas. Now, at least 15 Palestinians died, and more than 1,000 were injured Friday in clashes with Israeli soldiers, Palestinian authorities said, as tens of thousands of Gazans demonstrated on the Israeli border of the Strip. Some protesters turned violent, drawing live fire from Israeli soldiers, the Israeli military said. So, it doesn't sound like from that report like they were even trying to gain entry to Israel. They were just demonstrating. Maybe they were throwing rocks or something. I get it. Look, if you throw rocks, expect to get shot, right? That's a fair standard. But no complaints, no international human rights complaints coming down on them.
Yeah, it looks like these migrants in the fight decided to take the fight to Israel, and that didn't go so well.
Yeah, it looks like Israel took the fight back and won. And the KD was pretty good there with the Israelis.
KD was pretty good, and I don't see the United States ever doing such things.
Well, that's the question, right? Is if these migrants do come and they do start raising some consternation, as Texans may say, how are we going to respond? Like, will we respond with this same type of force? Look, here's the thing, and this may be an unpopular take. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for Israel to do what they did here. Okay, depending on if these Palestinians were shooting rockets or throwing rocks or throwing bricks or doing whatever to Israeli soldiers, yeah, look, expect to get shot. But
yeah, there are a lot of leftists who do the meme where they say, the peaceful Palestinians. Let's be honest, these people are not always peaceful.
No, in fact, they
have a long record of attacking people.
Yeah, like the whole meme about like rockets into Israel. Like, yeah, it happens. Sure. Yeah, a lot of times it's like bottle rockets that don't you could get hit with one and it won't hurt you, but a lot of times it's like kids with 7-Up bottles, Roman candles or something.
Yeah,
like it's
your science fair project.
Yeah, like it's like Ahmed, building a clock, but it's not. Many in the media in America like to present it as Palestinian 12-year-olds lining up like Russian surface-to-air missiles and shooting them at Israeli preschools. Okay, that's not going on. Okay, that isn't happening. But yeah, I mean, they do attack. The Palestinians do attack Israel. That's no lie, and they get attacked back. And the whole situation over there is just kind of complex and murky, and not something I.
And honestly, it shouldn't be any of our business.
Right. It's not something I'm particularly concerned with. Right. I'm not going to be one of these PLO defending BDS divestment types. But okay, here's the thing: if this is the standard by which countries can defend their borders, I am okay with that. I endorse that. This is even more hardcore than Orban in Hungary. They were just using water cannons in Hungary. Israel's out there capping nibbas. They're out there dropping these guys. Okay, let's make that the standard. And I expect American soldiers to be allowed to do the same.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. These people are not citizens, therefore they're not protected under the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. So,
right, and what else would you call a contingent of foreign agents, of foreign legionnaires, forcibly trying to cross your border, right?
Who actually say they're in the fight.
Yeah, these people say they're in the fight. They're Honduran nationalists, and they just say, "Yeah, we're coming into your country." Right? Okay, if the crackhead down the street says he's coming into your house, what are you gonna do? Okay, you're gonna say no, you're not, and then if he forces his way in, you're gonna if I had my drops ready, I would do the Sam Hyde. We're just gonna kill him. You're going to defend your house and your property. And why is our nation any different? Why are the rules for our country any different? They shouldn't be.
Well, I don't remember who said this. I think it might actually have been Malik Obama. But someone said that, basically, when you lock your door at night, it's not because you hate everyone else in the world. It's just you care about your family more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not you're not going to grandma who knocks on your door and saying, "All right, you can't come in, grandma. Stay out in the cold." It's not about that. What it is you're putting your family first, and you're letting your family into your house and people you trust.
Mhm.
You don't let every single person in the world into your house.
But the problem is that works on a national scale when the nation has a familial bond, when there are familial, one could say, blood ties that keep the nation together.
Of course.
When people have allegiances to one another by virtue of being a part of the same nation. But as we've talked about, America is no longer a nation in the true sense. We are a country, absolutely. We are an economic and geographic zone. But the definition of a nation is a state that, or not even a state, it's a collection of people united by a common heritage, culture, language, traditions, etc. And Americans, our European fans will meme us with the 56% thing, but there's some truth to that. We don't have a common culture, common history, heritage, culture, language, traditions. We have none of that anymore.
Not anymore. We used to. We used to have that, and it was very strong. And those were some of our glory years. I mean, I recently went to the San Jacinto Monument, and I saw that, and it was built in the 1930s. Built in the 1930s when we were still quite homogenous, and it's really a sight to behold. It's huge. They fit an entire museum inside that thing. It's got carvings all around it. You walk around it, it tells you the story of these men's fight against the Mexicans, and you look at that and you're just in awe. And then you turn around and you see the modern buildings, which are blocky and very aesthetically unappealing, purely functional. And it's just that dynamic that makes you realize what diversity is really given us.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator, right? When you're trying to appeal to just the average consumer, you're going to build very generic, nondescript things. Right? This is why, like commie block style housing, nobody likes it. Right, but it's not going to be restrictive to the type of like background, right? Anybody can live in just a square commie block house, and
yeah, commie block house is a very good term.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with consumer products, and this speaks to part of why the international, rootless, transnational, corporatist, globalist, capitalist media,
that
banking,
gets longer every time
banking,
you say that.
financial, and Middle East expansionary elites, globalists want to reduce everyone in the world to just atomize consumer units. Because if you can have one general market, it's easier to sell to them than to a bunch of different markets, right? Like if I sell cars, for example, and there's a group of people, right? There's 100 people out there, but 10 people want a sports car. 50 people want a sedan. 10 people want a truck. 10 people want an SUV. And 10 people want like a roadster, like a Mazda Miata or something. Okay, I'm going to have to build a lot of different cars at a lot of cost to me in research and development to address the needs of each base of this consumer group. I got to design a truck. I got to design a roadster. I got to design a sports car, etc. But if everybody out there in the world just wants a simple 4-door sedan, then I can just design one car, save the money on research and development, and everyone's going to buy it. And by the way, I'm buying the parts in a greater bulk, so I'm making more profit. This is kind of the theory behind, like in the Soviet Union, when the communist governments were building cars, when they had car companies, they would build one model. Right, there was one vehicle you could buy, and there was usually an 8-year wait for it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing is once the elites figured out, because there were a lot of elites in the Soviet Union who figured out, hey, this isn't working too well around the 90s, and of course the Soviet Union would later collapse. And you wonder, why if communism was propped up by elites, why aren't they doing it anymore? Well, because communism, what that was outright slavery. You knew you were basically a slave under communism. Under the system we have now, you're a slave, you're a worker unit. It's just they make you feel good. They give you your consumerism to make you feel like you're not a slave.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with 1984 style totalitarianism, which is what everyone is always taught to be afraid of. When you think about that story, the guy, he lived in his little miserable little cubicle, and he had nothing, right? He had his little telescreen that gave him orders from the government, and he, had to go about his life, and everything was very gray and drab. Well, everything now is very, very bright and vivid, right? Everything, there's a lot of dopamine stimulation going on.
Yeah, the future has turned out to be less 1984 and more Brave New World,
Sure.
where everyone is, of course, Brave New World, by the way, highly recommend reading because the idea of Brave New World compared to 1984 is that everyone in Brave New World thinks that they're living the best they've ever lived, and lots of them are very drugged up with various chemicals and things,
Yeah.
and they have all the dopamine stimulus they want, but as today, they're just slaves when it comes down to it. They're worker units for the
Right.
elites to mess with.
Yeah. No, the life of the average college graduate, for example, like I just got out of college, and the life that most people who graduated in my class are going into is a life where they will get a job for $45,000 a year, and they will work for 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they'll get up at 6 in the morning and go to work and be at work by 8, and then work their job till 5 o'clock in the evening. They'll come home, get some takeout food on the way home, and then they'll come home and watch TV for a couple hours, and then plug in the the VR machine and do their hook up their whatever, do their VR like kami delivery
VR
right to their house, like
VR Hatsune Miku.
yeah, like they're and their real doll, and play their video, and then like go to sleep and do it all over again the next day. And that is like your dopamine is very stimulated, right? You feel like you're having fun. I'm having so much fun, with my like VR robotic automated kami machine. Like this is awesome, but it's empty. It's soulless. It is the life of the soulless consumerist bugman.
Yeah, and it's not just the bug man either, because also they've done it to women by pushing women in the workforce and pushing this equality narrative with women that they're exactly the same as men. They've successfully turned women into nothing but capitalistic worker units.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, and they've made it so it's a necessity now for women to work too. I mean, through mass migration and manipulation of markets, the labor market, they've made it so these men. It used to be, right? It used to be you could get a job out of college. Like a college degree used to mean something. And so you get a job out of college, you'd go to work, and within a few years, you would have enough money and be making a good enough wage that you could support a two-child family. That used to be the way it works. But now, because there is a surplus of workers, the rootless cosmopolitan international capitalists that control the corporations and set the wages, not enough money in the budget to pay you a wage there, bud. We're paying you. We're going to pay you $50,000 a year instead of the $80,000 you expected. So now your wife has to work, right?
Yeah.
Now your wife has to work, and so now if you do have kids, you're going to send them off to some daycare unit to get beat around or beaten to death like that little baby did by some Somali immigrant who does not give a fuck about them, dude.
Yeah, or alternatively brainwashed by some cat lady.
Yeah. No, it's the illusion of freedom. It is absolutely the illusion of freedom.
Yep.
And it really is sad. I mean, it really is uncomfortable how many people can't see through that.
Yeah, and don't even get me started on the various connections with the government, big pharma, and the opiate crisis. I mean, you have a populace that's obsessed with drugs and things. That's a lot easier to control.
Yeah. Well, no, a populace that has been sapped of will to fight, of the basic urge to stand up for yourself. This is something that is conditioned into it. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or some person who's going off on these things, but it really is real. And there's a lot of truth to this. A population that has been taught to just kind of keep your head down and not think about the bigger picture and just be very individualistic. An individualistic population is much easier to do this sort of thing to, because people will be preoccupied with their financial well-being, their personal well-being, what they think is their personal well-being, and they won't be thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah,
and that is absolutely the situation we're in.
We've gotten to a cultural point where it used to be in Western civilization, people would embrace struggle. But now people put their head down. They run away from struggle. They don't want to tackle large challenges. They just want to get by.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fear that people feel, the social fear that people feel if they do stand up for themselves, right? If they do, one of the things I know you, we're about the same age. So one of the things that we've grown up with, at least in the schools that I went to, is this idea, and this is sort of an allegory, but if you ever get in a fight in school, right, somebody could come up to you, and this is the way it was in my school, someone could come up to you and just sock you right in the face. And if you punched him back, you would be suspended as well from school.
Yeah, you get the same punishment. That's how it was for me as well.
Yeah, and so anybody who stands up for themselves, you're taught to just be pushed around, right? And especially in public schools, you're taught that you just have to take it. And, of course, there's a racial component to this as well, that we all know, who is going to be more violent, who's going to start more fights. We know the stats on this. And it's very...
I wonder who.
Yeah.
Anyone takes a look around their high school, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, you could walk into... Yeah. There's some jokes that could be made there. But yeah, people are taught to not stand up for themselves. And when people are raised in that sort of environment, they will absorb that. Despite what they may know rationally to be true or right, they will still absorb that as their mentality. And that is the place our society's in. And God, when you think about the totality of American public schools, it's not only the disciplinary aspect, but also the educational aspect and what people are taught. Thankfully, I was never really given the full dose of American history, whitey, bad whitey type stuff. And when I was in schools,
was I given that.
Yeah. What did you learn about whitey?
Well, first off, I learned that the Crusades were because the Christians got upset that there were brown people, so they went to go kill them. I actually took an early college class my junior year, and I remember my history professor, I got marked off for saying in like a discussion post that what was it? Oh yeah, I said that whites and blacks committed violence against each other in the civil rights movement, and I got marked off because supposedly there was no proof in the book that blacks committed violence. So that was very interesting, and I would later also get docked points in that class for defending the nuclear family and saying that it wasn't actually some sort of terrible oppressive structure.
Well, I wonder who wrote that book.
Yeah, I wonder who. There are many details there.
Yeah. No, it's and that's just emblematic, I think, of what happens to kids all across the country. And that's just the education aspect of it. There's media as well, where whites are always portrayed as the aggressor. Whites are always portrayed as the oppressor, the aggressor or the oppressor. And
well, they're either. I mean, to sort of counter you on that. Actually, recently in media, I've been seeing whites portrayed as very submissive and like very, very cucky. And in a lot of commercials, like it will always.
Yes.
I've seen at least 3 commercials like in a row where you've got the cucky, submissive white guy who's dumb, and then the very smart alpha black family comes, and they know all of what's going on.
Yes, there was a DirecTV commercial a few months ago that I saw where it's like some people like paying more for cable. Some people also like, doing this and that. There were like 4 examples of people doing dumb stuff, and all 4 people doing dumb stuff were white people. And then, but then it's like, be smart and get DirecTV. And then it's a black man and a black woman sitting there on the couch, like happily watching TV. It's like, what's going on there? And the other aspect of this that we've talked about in the past is like the whole Disney Channel effect, where kids are shown, so many parents out there just don't know any better, right? They think, the cartoons are going to be just like they were when I was a kid, when it was fairly innocent and innocuous, like Speed Racer or something, He-Man.
Yeah, Looney Tunes.
Yeah, not that anymore. The family is portrayed in these Disney Channel cartoons, or Disney, not cartoons, but Disney Channel TV shows. It's always the dumb dad, the dumb white dad is always a stupid idiot. And if there is a dad shown who is competent, he's a person of color. And the most alpha characters in all of these kids shows are always either the kid, which is sort of ironic, or it is like the alpha Latinx teenager or woman. They're always the leader.
Definitely. Yeah, I've noticed this as well with when I visit some of my younger cousins and things that they'll have the Disney Channel on, and I'll glance at the television. I'll be making a good old PB&J. I highly endorse peanut butter jelly sandwich, and I'm looking at the screen, and I notice all these patterns. Like the white dad is always portrayed as like a very dumb, not really respectable, and then you'll have the based female kid there who knows everything. She's 6 years old, and she's already knows everything. With her based black friend as well.
Yeah, like Bella and the Bulldogs. Remember that?
Not at all. I was raised on Boomerang because my parents actually knew what they were doing.
Yes. Boomerang, was that like the public TV?
No, Boomerang is like they play only the old cartoons. So I was raised on like Looney Tunes and like stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, see, when I was a kid, we didn't have cable. My parents just like saw no value in having cable, which is probably smart because cable was all garbage. So I watched like Zoom on TV on like PBS, which was sort of weird, like New York theater. It was a weird thing. People will know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I didn't watch the cable TV shows. I read books. That's back when I actually read books. I don't really read books anymore.
James, the big brain child back in the day.
That was really, yeah, I was the only kid. Fun fact, I was the only kid in my kindergarten class who was reading at all. And I had like a 6th grade reading level. And I was like, wow, I'm really big brain. And then I like in middle school, I like stopped reading.
Yeah, I mean in school as well, I was always proficient in English. Terrible at math, but very very proficient at English. I did like reading as a kid. Lots of what I read was just about dinosaurs, but I loved reading as a kid.
Maybe the reason people stop reading is because of all the like dumb, boring stuff we have to read in school.
Yeah, no,
Lose interest.
The amount of like I remember having to read Jane Eyre. God, I wanted.
Oh God, that was horrible. Yeah.
Oh, did you have to do that?
Had to read Jane Eyre.
So you spark noted it like I did. Got it.
Absolutely.
Dude, it was terrible. I hated the discussions on it. And we always had to read all these like very feminized like gay books, and then we had like an entire year devoted to exclusively Holocaust literature.
Oh jeez.
And I mean that's nonstop. Like it gets old fast.
Did you ever read any primary sources about World War II?
Such
certain, as certain like diaries that were like written by figures in prison?
No, I never read that in school. Later on I did.
So you did read Anne Frank's diary afterwards.
Anne Frank's diary, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we read the last book I remember reading for school was in high school. It was a book called The Things They Carried. No, was that it? It was no, maybe it was a different one. It was about Things They Carried about Vietnam. No, the last one I remember was like, no, it was Things Fall Apart is what it is. About some like shithole African country where like everyone's like superstitious and they're like killing each other over like dumb stuff. And this guy gets exiled, and I was like, wow, like I really don't care about this at all. I could not relate to the characters, but we were supposed to like sympathize with like the characters, be like, oh, doesn't this speak to you? And I was like, nah, fam, like I don't care.
Yeah, they did that to us too. I don't know, like it seemed like a lot of the books that they showed us were like really tailored towards like the womanly like over emotional stuff, and like I remember like most of the like men, like I'd be, well, I guess we were boys then, but I'd be in like the back of the class like joking about something, and I wouldn't even be paying attention. Like none of the males were engaged at all. It was like only the females.
I remember in 9th grade, I think it was, we were watching some Shakespeare play, and we were only interested because like we had heard a rumor from people from last year that there was like a shot with some titty in it, and that like there was like partial nudity for like half a second, so we were all like really intently watching to like, see when that was going to be.
The screen.
Yeah, I don't think it ever happened though. I think we got pranked.
That's a pretty good prank.
Yeah, it maybe. Oh, dude. Maybe the teachers like put it out there so we'd actually pay attention. Who knows?
Ooh, that's very subversive. Very subversive.
Yeah. And then when I got to college, we had to read books like this book about what was it? It was I had a Jewish history professor for freshman year, and we were learning about like the Israel-Palestine conflict. Oh, she also taught us about like colonialism and all this stuff.
Oh boy.
And like I just remember going like I was not even like woke to really anything at the time. But I just remember thinking, like, okay, like the nations that got colonized are now doing so much better than the nations that weren't colonized. Because we had to go through and like look at like which ones were and which ones weren't. And it's like, okay, like yeah, we can say that there were some negative outcomes, absolutely, but also like like
And
I think a lot of these people are glad they were.
yeah, they're glad. Oh no, they gave us railroads. Whatever will we do? You know, and they'll bring it up in like the strangest classes. I remember getting a lecture on the Holocaust in math class. I remember in environmental science class, she was like pointing at a map, and she was going on about we're supposed to be studying like the environment, and then she starts going on about like the winds and how there's warmer winds in Europe, and she goes, and that's why the Europeans built such a civilization, not because of race. Specifically says not because of race. Very, very interesting.
Pretty sure that it's warmer in Africa than Scandinavia, fam.
Yeah, yeah. I was see, I would have brought that up, but I was at a very diverse table. Yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah, I actually had the benefit of being red pilled in my high school career, so
Yeah. See, I think things would have gone very, very differently for me. I started to get red pilled actually when I was in high school, and I've told this story I think before about actually I don't know if I have, but I will now. About Trayvon Martin is one of the first things that red pilled me. That was back in 2012, 2013, and
2012.
yeah, and so I saw the story at first. Right now, I had still still sort of libertarian. And I believed the whole like racist cops like shoot black people for no reason type stuff because I hadn't looked into it, and I remember seeing the news about Trayvon Martin getting shot, and my initial reaction was, wow, another racist white cop shot a black teenager, like how predictable, racist America, right? But at the same time, I still wanted the Zimmerman to have a fair trial. I still wanted the guy to at least go to trial and see what the facts of the case were. But I remember the reaction from other people at the time, especially from a black classmate of mine, was no, just kill him, just give him the death penalty now. And I was like, well, hold on a sec, like he's probably guilty, right? Because he probably wasn't justified in shooting him, but like let's at least do a fair trial. The guy's like, no, just
hold
just
on
kill
there,
him.
Tyrone.
I was like, just kill him, and I was like, well. And that's when I started to kind of realize the dissonance that existed between what I thought about justice and what other people thought about justice. And
Yeah, my first thing was when that Muslim, I think he was Omar Mateen, shot up the gay nightclub. And I've been trained to signal for both of these people, and I didn't know who to signal for. And I short-circuited, and here I am now.
Wait, actually?
Yeah, no, that was actually the first red pill I ever
jeez.
had. I didn't know who I was supposed to like sympathize with. Because the Muslims, but the Muslims are killing the gays. So do I sympathize with the gays or the Muslims? And then
Wow,
that was when my liberalism died.
that was what, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Jeez, that's crazy. I remember when the Pulse thing happened, I was sort of undecided too because I saw it and I was like, well, like no, I wasn't undecided. I did the whole bit where it's like oh, we got to keep these Muslims out because they kill gays, right? and we need to protect the gays in our liberalist society or whatever. And that was like my line at the time, but that's before I took the gay pill.
James took the gay pill, everyone. Let's make that well known.
I should say took the
James, now a homosexual.
took the
Traps,
red pill
hit
on
him up.
gays. Well, we do have some traps in our Discord, so
We do have a single trap in the Discord, much to my dismay.
there's probably more than that. I highly doubt there's only one trap. I have my doubts.
I mean, I hope there's only one trap, but you might be right there.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Let's talk more about the opioid crisis because I think you were onto something there, and we should probably flesh that out a little bit more. And also, there's like not that much news. We could bitch about Trump some more too. That's always fun. So we'll do that when we come back right here at Nationalist Review. See you on the other side of the break. Welcome back. Hour 2, Nationalist Review, the best optics podcast on the entire American right wing. Whether it's dodging out of live streams due to shady flags in the background of certain individuals' webcams, or taking very interesting pictures at historical monuments, we have the best optics. Joined, as previously mentioned by Joseph from the America First Discord. Good times here. So we're going to talk a little bit about the opioid crisis here in the second hour. You're from a little bit further east than I am, so you have a little bit different perspective on the opioid crisis. I'll talk a little bit about the state of Trump and the Trump presidency as well, and sort of just tie everything together here in the second hour. No real plan. I know we're usually very scheduled with this program, which some people like, some people don't like, but I think we're off on a good tangent there at the end, so we'll keep that going. But we were talking in the first hour, at the end of the first hour, about how modern American society has led people to feel like they have the most freedom they've ever had, but in reality, there are quite a few restrictions being placed upon them that they don't notice. Things like free speech, right? We think we have free speech until you speak freely about the wrong thing and you lose your job and you're fired and doxxed and your life is effectively over. One of the other facets of freedom that people don't often consider is the dependence of many Americans on opiates and other opioid drugs, whether it's painkillers or others. People are more drugged up in America now than ever before. What sort of impact is that having on society and on our culture? Not even on our politics, but just on our culture.
Oh, well, I mean, just one impact it's having is, I was just going into Subway. I wanted a nice Subway sandwich, and I'm standing there waiting patiently to pay, and the woman in front of me who's paying is jittering violently and demanding that the people at front give her a bag of cucumbers. And this is the sort of thing that these opiates will do to you, and it's hitting. I of course live in the South, and it's hitting us pretty hard down here. The opiate crisis is out of control. Absolutely. There are a lot of people, I know at least 3 people who grew up with parents who were basically useless because they were addicted to opiates. And this crisis is tearing apart families. And the family, of course, is the base of the nation. And if you can destroy that, then you're going to have an absolute society in chaos. And opiates are one of the best ways to destroy family. And when you do opiates, you don't just harm. Libertarians like to do the meme where they say, well, drugs just hurt you, so what's the problem? Opiates do not just hurt you. It's not like if you light up some weed or something and only you are smoking the weed. Opiates, there are people who will go in the streets and they will assault people. It turns you into this like animal. Like, people get so addicted to these opiates, they'll do anything for them. And they'll abandon their families, they'll abandon their friends, they'll assault their family and friends. And it's tearing a lot of southern communities apart. It's a very, very sad thing that's going on down here. Yeah, and the dependence becomes something where if anyone tries to intervene or to help out, then the addict, and this is something that is generally true with drug addicts, they will lash out at the person trying to help and offer assistance. And I've seen even up here in like the Seattle area, which is not usually thought of as a bastion for drug addiction. I mean, maybe like weed and stuff, but it's not thought of as a place where people, people are into like hardcore drugs. There are several people who I know from high school who were like very smart, capable, promising people that seem to have the right background growing up and supportive parents and doing well in school and everything, who are now addicted to heroin and are now, essentially people without a future because of the permanent damage they've done to themselves through heroin use. And it really is terrible what's happening. And that is only one aspect of it, right? The illegal drugs and the heroin and other street drugs are one aspect of it, but the other aspect is, of course, the prescription drugs. And this idea
that you can medicate your way out of anything, and that medication is the only way to deal with pain or problems that you're having. And I know they're not opiates, but the amount of like SSRIs and serotonin uptake re-inhibitors that children especially are being given nowadays,
That's true.
is fairly concerning. Right, I remember being like 6 or 7 and being around kids who were being, given Ritalin because they were too fidgety in school. Right, they're too hyperactive.
I know way too many people like that, and
yeah,
I know 2 people, in fact, and their mother gave them Ritalin, and honestly, they've never been the same. As a kid, I remember them being very hyperactive and being quite similar to myself as a child. And nowadays, of course, you mellow out when you get older, but they've mellowed out far too much, and they're not the same. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the root of a lot of the push for overprescription and push for prescribing young kids, and it's young boys, right? Young girls are not being given Ritalin, right? This is a young
Of
male
course,
thing
because in a feminized society, that's what you get.
It stems from the idea of gender equality, and it stems from the idea that the genders should be equal and that they should be held to the same exact standards. But we know, like, anybody can tell you that young boys and young girls are different, right? They behave differently. Young boys tend to be more hyperactive. This is because, as we know, young girls mature mentally and physically faster than young boys do. By about 2 years. And I know that scale sort of adjusts as you get older, and by the time you're 21, it's pretty much evened up, or 18, 19, that area, it's pretty much evened up. But boys and girls develop differently, and they develop at different rates. And so young boys are going to have a harder time behaving, right? We refer to it as behaving correctly, but behaving in a mature way. They're going to be more hyperactive, going to try to talk more and be more rambunctious. And that is okay. And that's the reason why for a lot of, for much of history, boys and girls have been schooled separately at young ages, and then they are mixed together, around the age of 10 or 11, because they do have different, needs when they are younger. And other societies do this, by the way. Other countries and cultures do this. I know it's very common in a lot of Asian schools. And I don't know that from experience, Spurgs, don't grill me. Very common for genders to be schooled differently. The whole Japanese schoolgirl thing. It's not just a move. But they do it for a reason.
Let's not get into Japanese schoolgirls on the podcast, please.
Well, we need a whole show dedicated to that. If we're going to truly do that topic justice, we need a whole hour dedicated to schoolgirl posting.
Hey, you ever do that, just call me up.
Yeah, I might have to.
But back on the actual schoolgirls, yeah, I know what you mean. The gender segregated Asian countries. By the way, lots of these countries outperform us academically in many levels. Almost like that might work a bit.
Yeah, and almost like they're not like spending their education resources on like diversity training and stuff.
Yeah,
and they're not spending it on how to improve the political power of X marginalized group. How to study the whinings of X, Y, or Z marginalized group.
Yeah, I saw a pretty good post the other day, and it said American politics are debating Harry Potter's wand and how much money to give to Tyrone. And Chinese politics are just saying, hey, how about we build that, 30-mile long train? Yeah, sure. Sounds good. That's China, and we wonder why we're being outperformed. These Asian countries, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, a lot less drama and a lot more seriousness in many of these countries worldwide that are beating us. And we used to be that way, by the way. We used to be a serious country where serious discussions and serious conversations took place. But I think our populace has been so infantilized, and we are a nation of to a large degree, mental children who are making decisions about politics. You see these March for Our Lives posters where all these adults are out here holding posters about Harry Potter. It's like, how embarrassing
Harry
is that?
Potter and the Hunger Games.
I saw the one where it's like, you think a generation raised on Harry Potter and the Hunger Games is going to give up easily? It's like, wow.
Yes, I do.
Actually, yes, because you're given participation trophies for everything.
Yeah, you are giving up. You're giving up your rights like nothing.
Ooh, hot take. but rights don't matter, man. Right? Rights, as we know from that video. Did you see that video? The one I posted a few days ago or yesterday from Jonathan Roth and Anna Gasteyer, who said did a little video where they said that sometimes government tells you to give up your rights for the good of the collective, and that's okay.
Ooh, no, I did not see that. That's was he reading 1984 or was he making a serious video?
No, it's a serious commentary. They did this little thing, and we could talk about this on the show. They did a video where they did like a musical. Okay, so this guy, he dressed up as like kind of like Mr. Rogers. He's Jonathan Roth. Okay, he's a theater guy from New York. Oh my God, I wonder who.
God, that's gay.
Yeah, and they did like this weird musical thing where they were doing a video about why it's time to just ban all guns and confiscate all guns.
Man, I wasn't really convinced about this whole repealing the Second Amendment thing, but now that I've seen a musical, I'm gonna throw my rights away now.
Now that I've seen a couple cosmopolitan elites do a little musical for me, I'm ready to hand over my firearms because I realize that the good of the collective is more important than the rights of the people.
I agree, comrade. I agree.
Yes. Yeah. But no. So they did this video, and part of it was the statement that sometimes government tells you that you have to give up your rights for the good of the collective. The other thing they did, and people can watch this video, and we'll put it in the show notes. If we were really like a well-produced show, I would play the video here, but I don't have my audio like set up to do that. So next time. But the other thing they did was they framed this whole conversation as like a letter to the editor from like a concerned parent. Okay, so what they did is they said like our writer this week is Linda from Alabama or whatever, and she says that one of her kids, she has two kids, and one of her kids can chew gum in the house responsibly, but the other kid keeps leaving his gum everywhere on the hardwood floors. What should the parent do? And they said that, well, you should just ban all the gum in your house because your kids can't use it responsibly. And they framed it, and they framed it as government being the parent and us being the children.
Hold on,
right?
Or you just tell the kid who's putting his gum on the stairs, stop putting your gum on the stairs, or else you're grounded.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that would make sense.
I mean, that's what any normal parent would do.
Right, but no, I mean, we're doing collective punishment. We're punishing the collective
punishment. We know. See, and that's the thing. Like when
it's the American way, goy.
The Sargonites and things will say like we are the super Sargon. They'll say we're the super collectivists, but like honestly, when we're up against people who actually say the good of the collective, like without any irony in their voice, they're being 100% serious. Look, we're not the biggest threat here. People who say that identity exists versus people who say the good of the collective.
Well, yeah, that's what they do, right? When any like Sargonite sees you argue for group interests, they automatically assume you're arguing for like full-blown communism.
Yeah.
And it's disingenuous, and they know that it's not true, but that's the bit they do where they're like, oh, you may think that, but I'm an American, and I believe in individual rights, and I believe in freedom, and it's like, yeah, dude, so do I, right? So do I, but I also believe that is our collective interest, right? Protecting freedom and protecting individual rights in whatever form they manifest themselves, that is an interest that you and I share as European Americans. But it's not an interest that third worlders share when they come over and 80% of them say we need stricter gun control.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the stats for yourself on that, and you'll find out that these people coming in do not support your Second Amendment. They do not care for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the Sargonites, like, they try to equivocate what people like us will say about like identity and group interests and identity politics being real with like an endorsement of Black Lives Matter. And it's like, no, I don't endorse Black Lives Matter, but I understand Black Americans standing up and organizing collectively for Black interests. Right? I don't want them to succeed because that would come at the expense of my interests.
Yeah, exactly.
But I understand why they're doing it. And I understand La Raza, I understand Mecha, I understand like all these other groups like advocating for their own interests, because frankly there's such a power vacuum in America right now where Americans like are not standing up for our own interests. Right, nobody is fighting for themselves, and so these groups are sensing weakness, and they're realizing now is the time to push the spear forward and to what is the expression? To
initiate the
it's a military expression. Yeah, I guess that too. But yeah, they're sensing now is the time to strike. Now is the time to plunge as deep as they can into the heart of their enemy, but to pursue their interests. Because no one's going to stop them. No collective is going to organize to stop them. The people they're fighting against are a group of like Jordan Peterson watching, Sargon viewing, like individualists, like big brain individualist nibbas who are not going to be able to muster a defense against them.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you have a bunch of people, and well, I mean, when it comes to the Jordan Peterson Sargon individualist, you get to the point that you look at them as a collective. I mean, they're
I just saw what you saw too.
They're a collective of like individualists.
I think this should be the episode.
That's pretty good. I
need to minimize the Discord while we
we should.
Sorry. Go ahead.
But what I was saying is that these people, they're a collective of individuals, which as contradictory as it sounds, like you take any liberalist, they probably believe exactly the same thing, unless they're the Worski brand of liberalist, in which case
disavowed. Dude.
That's too far right for me. That's a bit too radical. But if we're talking the Sargon liberalists, then most of them believe the exact same thing. They're a collective pushing for the interest of classical liberalism. I mean, and then of course they'll say everyone else who pushes their own interest is bad. It's terrible. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and that was the integral hypocrisy about the liberalist group. Right, if you're going to, when Sargon says he's going to have meetups and we're going to form communities to push for liberalist ideas, like, okay.
Individualist communities.
Yeah, like, okay, how is that any different than what every other group is doing?
Yeah, the thing is too much individualism, bad. Too much collectivism, also bad. You've got to have the balance there where you're realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, where you respect the individual's right to an identity, to an individual identity, but you also recognize that group identities are important.
God, the worst thing I've ever heard from a liberalist was V, when he was, I think he was debating Spencer, and he said, but what about my gamer identity, Richard Spencer? Well, would you take away my gamer identity? For
you, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Also, I never want to hear the word gamer again in my life. But that's another topic.
Well, yeah, the GQ is equally as important as certain other questions. The gamer question.
That's true. The gamer question is important.
Yeah, but I mean, like the very fact that people have a gamer identity, like, doesn't that speak to like a bigger problem? God. Doesn't that speak to some bigger issue that people identify as like, oh, I identify as someone who sits around in my like study in Romania and plays video games.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I stack my bookcases in my little gypsy tent, and I use like free Wi-Fi to play video games.
Yeah, he's got his gypsy tent right outside the McDonald's.
It's funny because I'm looking right at a McDonald's from my high castle here on my window.
And your high castle.
I think I could connect to McDonald's Wi-Fi. I could do the show from McDonald's Wi-Fi here. I could also do it from. No, I'm not gonna. Not gonna name the other Wi-Fi's I could do it from.
You comically dropped out right when you said I could do the show from McDonald's Wi-Fi. So how about we don't do that?
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, I'm viewing the Wi-Fi signals I could do the show from, and there are several restaurants here that I could do the show from. It's really taking one to the capitalists.
That is taking one to the capitalists right there.
Yeah. What?
Also, you'll have to share your bandwidth with the 20 other people on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'll have to share my bandwidth with the guy sitting in the corner booth at McDonald's playing World Star videos really loudly from his cell phone.
I wish that wasn't like actually true.
Yeah, no, that actually does happen. No, the funny thing about the liberalists too is like fundamentally a lot of their ideas I don't think are bad. It's just the way they present and the way they are is like really off-putting to me. And their lack of recognition that there's only one demographic that can support these conversations, right? Like I'm all for having discussions about where rights come from. Okay, whether is it Locke or is Burke correct, or like, great. Okay, let's have those conversations, but let's also be practical. And let's realize that you're not going to convince, for example, I would like to see the liberalists go try to infiltrate, not even infiltrate, just go like march with this Creatura mob down here and like try to red pill them on the Locke question, okay? Like red pill them on like where rights come from.
Pablo Gonzalez, have you read John Locke?
Yeah, have you read Loki?
Would you like to debate? Yeah, would you like to debate the writings of Loki?
Yeah, it's like they'll laugh at you. Like they are going to fucking laugh at you. These are not conversations that can take place in a country with an IQ below 100, like realistically 110, but like they can't take place at all in a country with an IQ below like 100.
Well, I mean, you say that they'll laugh at you, but that's implying they even know what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, first you'd have to communicate to them in Spanish, which
first you'd have to learn Spanish, and then then ask him if he's read Locke in the original English.
Yeah, read Locke in the original. Are there maybe they've read Nietzsche in the original language?
Yeah, it's a bunch of philosophers coming over the border.
Yeah, no, I mean these are all like big brain philosophers coming over the border, but like again, some of these liberalist ideas like individual rights. It's like, okay, I don't disagree with that, but they always strawman you with this idea that if you believe in collective organization for a common goal, then you don't believe in individual rights. It's like, no, you can believe in both at the same time. Just like a liberalist can believe that in order to protect the liberalist rights, you have to organize in a liberalist collective. I don't know like what that would look like, how that would manifest itself.
Just imagine these people just like 150 years ago, manifest destinies going on, and they say, well, I don't want the label of a pioneer. I would rather just stay here and be an individual in my bookshop. They had an understanding of themselves as an individual and part of a greater national identity at the same time.
Right.
And that is what drove our ancestors to come and, what would be the word, complete manifest destiny and conquer this continent. Well, part of this continent.
Yeah, for a short time, anyways. Yeah, no, the pioneer is a great example, and the people who set out west are a great example because they consider themselves like frontiersmen. Obviously, they were individuals, but they viewed themselves as part. They viewed themselves as having an American identity. They still had a national identity, and they still view themselves as the forebearers or the representatives of the taming of the continent into something civilized, into something as part of
European.
Well, yeah, as part of broader Western civilization.
And they had an understanding of themselves as Europeans as well.
Yeah,
and as did the people they encountered. The Native Americans. They didn't sit there and say, well, we have to treat the white man who's walking on in. We have to treat him as an individual. We can't just assume that every white man walking into Sioux territory, wants to harm us.
Yeah, right.
We can't be doing that. No, the Native Americans saw people walking into their land, so they started, chucking spears at them.
Yeah,
that's just how it went.
Yeah, no.
And the colonists, they were just trying to settle the land, and they're walking in. They're not going to sit there and go, well, maybe that. I don't know what's it. Maybe walking on water over there. Maybe follow shadows over there. He could be. Maybe he's Red Locke. Maybe
he's a based squaw.
He's a based. Yeah, we're the based squaws, the based warriors. Based chieftain. they didn't do that. They saw them throwing spears at them and they shot them. Right? We had an understanding of this not so long ago, and they act like people who take our position are going against everything, when in fact our position is the one that's been the natural position for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's the natural position in times of conflict or in times of existential threat. And in times where things are good and people are not concerned about existential threat, and people are not concerned with their society being overrun or permanently destroyed, you can afford yourself to let this mindset take a backseat, right? You can afford yourself to think more about, this sort of like intellectual masturbation that a lot of these people do, right? When, for example, when America was a distinctly European country, and when it was more ethnically homogenous, people weren't concerned with racial identity, right? Race was not something that people cared about because it wasn't a point of contention between people. But now it is. But now race is a contentious issue, and so now people are being made aware of it. Likewise, in Europe, for the longest time, people did not think of themselves as white people, right? There was no conception of them as white. It was just understood. It was the default position, okay? You didn't have to think of yourselves as a white European. You just were. Now, with mass migration and multiculturalism, people do have to think of themselves as white Europeans, and that is a separate identity from a Muslim European or a Turkish European or a Afghani, etc. Right? And so things are different, and so to take your own side in these issues, even if you are a liberalist, is just the natural position and the natural way of the world, and yet these people they don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I would like to say that every single one of your ancestors is now rolling in his grave from hearing you utter the words Afghani European. Such a concept was so far out of these people's minds. I mean, if you would have gone to, I don't know, Richardson, your great-great-great-grandfather, I don't know if you're Anglo or not, I don't know what you are, but maybe Chang Mosha in your case, and you would have and you would have told him, like, oh yeah, someday, this Muslim man here, he will be just as European as you are. He'd look at you like you were crazy,
right?
Like he would not have a concept of that because. I mean, first off, they had enough trouble getting along with, the French and the Germans had enough trouble getting along. Like, Afghanis coming over, like, that's so far out of their mind.
Right. Yeah, no, their identities at that point were ethnic, right? And there were ethnic conflicts. Like, for example, like the Visigoths and the Romans, right? They were both what we would consider now to be white, but they had an ethnic conflict. The French and the Germans are another example, ethnic conflict. But now the conflict has moved beyond, has stratified, and it is no longer ethnic conflicts between Europeans. It is racial conflicts between Europeans and non-Europeans. Yeah. And that's the new frontier that it's being debated on. And the liberalists, they ultimately are going to have to see this. But then again, I don't really know how many liberalists there are. Like, to be honest.
Well, I mean, honestly, liberalists, I see them as more a sort of transition phase, because I used to be a Sargonite back in the day as well. He was sort of one of my I guess sort of a transition phase where I am now. Until the one day I saw a video of him where he like declared himself the new Socrates, smoking a cheap cigarette in his backyard.
Based.
And from then on, I never watched a Sargon video, but he was at least a useful gateway for me to sort of get more involved and be more anti. This is back when the anti-SJW was big, the SJWs subverting our Western society, and people who
the alt-right Nazis are equally as bad as the SJWs. Imagine my shock, the alt-right Nazis.
Oh, you got to look out. Right-wing SJWs. Yeah.
SJWs.
Yeah. So that crowd.
It's been like a year since I watched a Paul Joseph Watson video. Like one full calendar year.
I've never watched a full Paul Joseph Watson video in my life. I've watched the beginning, and I've never finished. I have,
Hmm.
however, finished the clip of him talking about the vibrant gay scene in Prague. That's a very interesting clip.
Is there a clip of that, or is it just the picture?
No, it's the picture, isn't it? You're right. You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
It is the picture. Wow.
Yeah, no, Charlie Nash from Breitbart posted a picture of him with Charlie Nash is gay. He posted a picture of him with Paul Joseph Watson last night on Instagram, and I commented, checking out the vibrant gay scene, huh? And and he liked my comment, so
Oh, okay.
meme well taken.
Yeah.
Not Paul,
Well,
Charlie from
oh,
Breitbart.
oh, okay. Thought you meant Paul.
Yeah.
I'd say props to you.
No.
Props to you, Charlie, for taking a joke.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's something weird about Paul Joseph Watson taking pictures with all these gay journalists. I
Isn't he
don't know. I don't know what's
actually
going on.
Like,
No, I've heard from people that he has a girlfriend. So
yeah, he has a
I think
girlfriend.
he's.
Okay, well, I retract my statement. I guess.
I've also heard that she's Korean, so I don't know if that's true or not though.
Ooh.
Look, I don't know. I am not sure the veracity of that claim. I've just heard that.
Oh, all right,
So-
all right. Just allegedly.
Yeah, and the allegedly Korean girlfriend. But no, going back to the liberalist thing, I know what you mean, right? Where talking about these people being in like a transitional phase, because I see this a lot in my YouTube comments when I post a video about something, and I'll talk about like race and identity or something, or demographic issues, and I'll get the comments from people who will say something like, well, can't we just not talk about race? Can't we just move past it? Can't we just talk about ideas? And they will always get swamped in the comments by people informing them why that's not possible. But when I look at those arguments, I'm reminded of myself just probably 2 years ago at this point, making those same arguments, thinking like I remember vividly watching the Milo Yiannopoulos Dave Rubin video, thinking yeah, I should be a classical liberal. Like, I do agree with classical liberalism, and I can remember thinking that, and so I do sympathize with these people. But ultimately, when you're confronted with the facts, if you're like a high IQ person and you're confronted with the facts, you cannot remain a classical liberal for very long.
No, not at all. Not in the modern day. I could see how you could, when we were still homogenous, but in the modern day, when you have all of these realities coming at you and hitting you in the face daily, I have no idea how people stay in that.
The what's it called? The what do they say? The Democrat plantation is what they say for what the MAGA peds say about the Democratic Party.
The Democrat plantation.
The Liberalist
yeah.
plantation. How do you stay in the Liberalist plantation?
Oh, the Liberalist plantation. This is a new take for me.
Yeah. No, I think that might be the episode title. Either that or El Goblino in a MAGA hat. I don't know.
El Goblino and MAGA hat. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's common though. Like the liberalist kind of big brain centrism, like it can only go so far, and you can only make so many videos talking about black feminists or and look, I find myself guilty of this too, where I'll do videos about like some crazy black feminist saying something, but with my content, and the difference I think is that with my content, I take it deeper than that, right? Like I'll actually like ask, why does this black feminist like object to white people? What are her problems with white people? I think a lot of the traditional like anti-SJW stuff is like, oh, she's a racist, she's the real racist, she's a dumb racist. It's like, okay, well, sure, fine, whatever, but
they're treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Yeah, and like fundamentally, I don't have a problem with her taking her own side, right? I don't have a problem with her standing up for her own people, but white people have to be able to take their own side too.
Yep, and there's of course the double standard that doesn't allow that.
The double standard, indeed. I wonder where that.
Yeah, and seeing some elites who push this have an entire country to flee back to if things get too bad here,
Well, that's one of the points that I made in the video I did today, where a lot of these elites who have dual allegiances view America as sort of an experiment, right? We're like a science project for a lot of people, where they can just play around with policies. Like it's like America to a lot of people is like Democracy 3, right? The video game where you just like experiment with like different different policies, and then it's like, well, if everything goes wrong, it's like, well, okay, I'll just like quit the game and start over.
Well, they openly say this. They call it the multicultural experiment.
I've not heard that.
You have
but I
not
don't
heard
doubt
that?
it.
Yeah, no, I've heard this. They say like multicultural experiment. They recognize that this is an experiment that they're doing.
Well, see, I never consented to be part of an experiment, so this is a violation of my NAP.
It is a violation of the NAP, and you're going to have to retaliate with equal and opposite force.
Throw off the experimentation shackles.
All right, don't. You're getting dangerously close to Mark's posting right there. So let's.
Yeah. Nothing to lose but our chains, fam. Yeah, what the like Parkland wasn't Hog the Hogster, wasn't he leading some like march where they were doing the nothing to lose but our chains?
Yeah,
Or was
they
that
were
some other
doing
thing?
that. They were doing the we have nothing to lose but our our chains, and yeah, absolute outright communist chants going on. Really makes you think.
Outright communists. There are a lot of those in America.
That's who we have to listen to. People who quote from the Karl Marx. Those are the people you should trust to take away your guns.
Yes, yes, indeed. Indeed. Well, did we miss anything? Is there anything else we should talk about? Kind of a roundabout show. I think it'll be good for people to listen to this. It's very very soothing sometimes to just hear like every point touched. I think we touched on like just about everything in society.
Yeah. I mean, let's see, what do we got the creaturas, we hit on the opioids. We honestly, I don't know what we didn't hit on tonight.
We didn't hit on Catholicism and the Pope saying there is no hell.
Oh, did he do that?
Yeah, apparently.
I'm not a Catholic, so I don't follow these things.
See, neither am I, because I don't worship at the synagogue of Satan. But
ooh, harsh neg at the Catholics, right
just a
there.
joke. I mean, like, can you name a more useless institution, though?
Yeah, look, we've seen the many scandals going on, and let's be honest, the Pope right now, not exactly the best. Not exactly the best.
I mean, this guy, like, there are legitimately people who consider themselves right wing who will cuck for this guy that protects child molesters, that leads. Oh, and the picture of him is leading a based multicultural congregation. Isn't that awesome? He defends child molesters. He cucks for mass migration. He goes back on very basic biblical teachings. This guy, what's going on with this guy? The Catholic Church, like. Look, it has been a force for a lot of good. It's been a very strong force for good in the past, but
It appears to have been subverted.
Yeah, but at this point, whomst of us cares?
Whomst of us? Yeah, I mean, honestly, most of the United States is it's Protestant, so does it affect most Americans? Not really.
Yeah, true. Alrighty, well, before we trigger too many people's religious receptors here with heathen posting, we better wrap it up. Again, the story to watch over the next week. We'll post this on Sunday, recording Saturday night, but the story to watch the next week is, without a doubt, this caravan, and this is as the guys at FTN referred to it, a litmus test. If this mass migration is allowed to take place on the southern border, it will be yet another sign of weakness from President Trump, and we've seen how weakness is received. Right, weakness is tested. Right, this is like even on like a micro level. Right, when you're around, people and you show weakness, they will see that as they will push that. Right, they'll use that as a.
Women do this all the time to test men.
Yeah, shit test.
Yeah. And the thing about these 3,000 Goblinos is that it's actually like it's a very personal issue for me, because if these people go through and they start going upwards, they're going to be in my backyard and they're going to be in my nice little town, and I'm going to have to deal with them. I'm going to have to deal with possible diseases being spread to my family members, which probably lots of them may have not even been recognized by the CDC. I'm going to have to deal with the crime rates. I'm going to have to deal with people who don't even speak my language. And it's very personal for me. And honestly, when I first saw this, it was pretty upsetting. And it was more upsetting in my town recently, the government has put up billboards in Spanish. We don't have a very high Mexican population here, and why would the government be putting up signs in Spanish? Billboards, large billboard advertisements in Spanish with .gov.
Well, I guess we just have to take comfort in the fact that when we take over, man, all government documents will be printed in English only, because that's the true way to put America first.
And that's true.
That is true. Alrighty, Joseph, thanks for coming on. Let's do it again for sure. I think a show with you and like Wardedly would be a very interesting.
Yeah, you're gonna have to police Wardedly a bit. But,
yeah, he might throw up some bad optics comments in the show.
He's pretty bad optics, but I think you can get him on.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it again. Let's do it again probably next week. We'll work out something. But thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate you out there, the audience. And as always, you can find us at amfirstmedia.com. We have a lot of articles going up. Alex Witoslawski doing a great job at posting those and keeping our writing staff in check. And we will, I guess, see you again next week. So thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you soon.